Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective here. In this video, I wanted to highlight a story that some of you have been bringing to my attention from out in California. This story here from the LA Times says, Governor Gavin Newsom rebuked by Sutter County Court for use of executive power amid COVID-19 pandemic. Before I talk more about this story, I just want to remind you that if you like Christian nerdy content like this, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification so that you know when I upload a new video. This story really ties into what I've been talking about with churches out in California and the government restrictions that have been placed on churches in regard to meeting indoors. Really interesting here. I'll read a little bit of this article and another article. The LA Times article here says a Northern California judge on Monday tentatively ruled that Governor Gavin Newsom overstepped his authority when he issued an order in June requiring vote-by-mail ballots to be sent to the state's 21 million registered voters. Sutter County Superior Court Judge Sarah Heckman also issued an injunction barring the governor from taking executive action that changes existing statutory law or makes new statutory law or legislative policy, rebuking a governor who has relied heavily on executive orders to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is where I think it ties in a little bit more with what I've been talking about with churches. Heckman's ruling determined that Newsom's executive order to send out the vote-by-mail ballots, as well as enact other precautions to reduce the threat of spreading the virus during the elections process, violated the California Constitution because it created new law. Under the state's constitutional separation of powers, only the legislature has the power to create laws. Now, this doesn't apply directly to what Governor Newsom has done in regard to churches, but it does apply in principle because the judge here is talking about Governor Gavin Newsom essentially establishing laws by the policies that he is enacting. And of course, we have a constitutional protection about the establishment of law in regard to our free exercise of religion. Let me read a little bit more of another article. This is from the Associated Press. Judge limits California Governor Gavin Newsom's powers during pandemic. A judge on Monday preliminarily ordered California Governor Gavin Newsom to stop issuing directives related to the coronavirus that might interfere with state law. Sutter County Superior Court Judge Sarah Heckman tentatively ruled that one of the dozens of executive orders Newsom has issued overstepped his authority and was an unconstitutional exercise of legislative power. She more broadly barred him from exercising any power under the California Emergency Services Act, which amends, alters, or changes existing statutory law or makes new statutory law or legislative policy. So there we see it again. She's really concerned that what he's doing is essentially establishing his own law. It's the second time a judge in the county has reached the same conclusion, which runs counter to other state and federal court decisions backing the governor's emergency powers. An appeals court quickly stayed the earlier order in June. Heckman's decision will become final in 10 days unless Newsom's attorneys can raise new challenges. Later it says, this is a victory for separation of powers, the lawmakers said in a joint statement. Newsom has continued to create and change state law without public input and without the deliberative process provided by the legislature. The article concludes, lawmakers of both political parties have criticized Newsom for not properly consulting with them before issuing sweeping orders and budget decisions. So the reason I think some of you pointed out this story to me is because some of you live out in California and are heavily affected by Governor Gavin Newsom's decisions, and I know some of you really have a problem with the approach that he has taken during the coronavirus situation. You really have major issues with the executive power that he has exercised. His case is that, well, this is an emergency situation, but as we can see here, even the California legislature has taken some issue with the way that he has gone about enacting his decisions. He does have certain powers as governor during an emergency situation. However, there still are checks and balances on that. And for churches, one of the major checks and balances is actually the Constitution itself. Now, that's true in the state of California as well as our national Constitution, and both of these protect the right for us to practice our religion freely. What I found so fascinating about this story is how the judge was talking about what Governor Gavin Newsom is doing as actually establishing a law. And that's exactly what our Constitution says the government cannot do in regard to religion. Now, whether this will hold up in appeals and in the legal system on a larger scale, I really don't know. But it was just really interesting to hear this judge's perspective and ruling. I know a lot of you see this as good news, though, because you see that Governor Gavin Newsom has exercised a lot of power, and this judge is really putting that power in check. I also see this as maybe something that could be good for churches. Again, this is in a particular county, Sutter County. I don't know ultimately where this will head legally and how it will apply to other places, but it does seem to set some precedent for the idea that, again, churches do have protections. Now, this case is not specifically talking about churches, from what I can tell, but the principles would still apply to how the governor is acting in regard to churches. So as I'm talking this morning, the day after Election Day, and the presidential election has yet to actually be decided, it reminds us that our government is something that we are talking about, thinking about a lot in this country. Maybe sometimes too much, but I do think that it is important. And the reason why it matters is because we do have certain rights and freedoms in this country, but it's something that has to be protected. Now, of course, we have to balance that with the health and safety of people, and that's the other side that's been talked about a lot in this coronavirus situation. But it's interesting to see that the court here actually has put a check on Governor Gavin Newsom, and even though he says it's about safety, they're saying, the court, the judge here is saying, you still have to go through the right processes and you cannot establish your own laws. That's what I hear this judge saying. So that's good to see a check on his power. I know a lot of you are happy about that. I'd love to hear what you think about all of this in the comments below. Just make sure you keep those comments positive and helpful to discussion. But as always, thank you so much for listening to some of my thoughts brought to you from A Frisch Perspective.